So most of the people in 2008 said, hey, I like one of these candidates. Now, people saying not so much. Obviously, they're disgruntled with the Republicans, but they're also disgruntled with Obama. Well, so is the next person that we're going to talk to. It's Rocky Anderson. He's the former mayor of Salt Lake City, former Democrat, and he's actually going to run as a third-party candidate in the presidential elections. Let me give you one, before we go to him, one quick quote to give you a sense of why he's so upset with the Democrats. He says, quote, "The Constitution has been eviscerated while Democrats have stood by with nary a whimper. It's a gutless, unprincipled party bought and paid for by the same interests that buy and pay for the Republican Party." Well, I couldn't agree more, but those are strong words. Rocky Anderson joins us now. Rocky, how are you?
It's great to be with you, and thank you. I listened to that earlier story. It is so fundamental that the American people understand that both of these parties, and Congress and the White House, are on the take, and it's the American people who are getting burned in the process.
So let's talk about that. I mean, I read an interview that you did earlier where you were talking about telecom immunity. I mean, I don't know any other presidential candidate who's talking about telecom immunity, but that's the reason I love that is because that's such an important issue. You use this as an example of Democratic collusion. What do you mean by that?
I mean that the Republicans and the Democrats are completely in bed with the same folks, these corporate interests who are in control of our government. The reason I'm doing this and the reason the Justice Party was formed is so that we can take the reins of our government and make sure that those in Washington are doing what's in the public interest rather than what's in the narrow interests of these corporations who really do have control of our government. This is a plutocracy. It's the control of government by the very wealthy at a time. I mean, this is the new Gilded Age. Never as great an economic disparity in this country since the 1920s, and it's getting worse. And Wall Street, they put more money into the president's campaign last time around than ever in the history of this country, and it's just getting worse.
Rocky,
and so what does he do?
Rocky, you know, the problem here is that I agree with you 100% and disagree 0%. Okay? Normally, I like to, you know, go back and forth a little bit, but look, I totally hear you on that. Now, the question, though, is, and a lot of people are going to ask you, wait a minute, if you get into a race and you're so reasonable and so progressive, won't that take votes away from Obama, in which case make it easier for a Republican to win?
And that's a great question, and it's actually that consideration that kept me from getting involved as in a third party or as a candidate until I realized that when we're driven by the fear of the lesser of two evils being defeated and not opting for a major change in the system, we're going to be stuck in this no matter what. The Republicans and Democrats, regardless of who's in power, they won't provide the international leadership that's required on climate change. They won't really stand up to Wall Street. Like you said, and people need to understand this. We have a certain narrow privileged class in this country that not only have almost all of the wealth, they're excused from violations of the law, sometimes felonies. President Obama, you mentioned the telecom immunity. When he was a senator, he told us before he received the Democratic nomination that he would join a filibuster against a bill that was tailored to provide immunity retroactively for the crimes committed by the telecommunications companies when they worked along with the administration in the illegal surveillance program, doing surveillance on our telephone calls and on our emails. Totally un-American, subversive to the very core of our constitutional rights. And then when he won the Democratic nomination, then Senator Obama turned 180 degrees and voted along with the majority of those in Congress to grant that immunity.
Rocky,
now,
I was covering that, and I was covering the race, and that's when I knew we were in a lot of trouble. Like
I did too.
You know, and
Yep.
it didn't. You know, at that point, your choices were Obama or McCain, so there's no question I was going to go for Obama, keeping it real, right? But at the same time, here's a guy whose mentor was Joe Lieberman in the Senate, and then that did that 180, and I thought, uh-oh, we got trouble here, right? But Rocky, you know, so if you say to me who should be president right now, Rocky Anderson, Barack Obama, or, you know, name the, you know, Newt Gingrich, whatever. I mean, it's the easiest choice in the world. you know, I don't pretend to be one of those fake, you know, guys on TV who was like, oh, I'm a journalist. I am, you know, I don't know. I don't have any opinions. No, I have an opinion. Boom. Rocky Anderson. It's too easy. But how are you going to win? Okay, so I know you're taking only $100 and less. Buddy Romer, we had on the show the other day, he's running on the Republican side. He's doing the same thing. And honestly, he's getting slaughtered. So how can you overcome these insane odds?
How did the Egyptian people overthrow their dictatorship? And by the way, we do have a dictatorship in this country. We have the pretense of a democracy, but we know our government is run by the dictatorship of these powerful, wealthy interests. How did they do it? They put their lives on the line. They did it by forming a grassroots movement. They stuck with it, and they coordinated it through social media. That's exactly how we're going to do it. You don't need a lot of television advertising, these hundreds of millions of dollars. Now President Obama is saying they're going to raise over $1 billion. That is obscene. We, the people, can do this if we hang together, if we don't cave into our fear of being a spoiler for the lesser of two evils, if we say we're going to choose another radically different way where our government will actually advocate, stand up, and promote the interests of the people of this country rather than the corporate interests who have bought our Congress and our White House.
And remember, everybody, Rocky was the mayor of Salt Lake City in Utah, the reddest state there is. So there's hope in that regard. But one last really quick question. If you do win by some miracle, keep it real, right? If you win, it is definitely going to require some sort of miracle. Is your first priority campaign finance reform?
It's getting the corrupting influence of money out of both the electoral system and our system of governance. Absolutely, because that is the reason we don't have universal health care. It's the reason we don't have leadership on climate change. It's the reason we have stranglehold by the military-industrial complex over our government and our budget. So yes, absolutely, we need to clean that up, and even if it takes a constitutional amendment, it would be the healthiest thing that we could possibly do for the United States government.
All right, the other thing I'm looking forward to is the convention of the Justice Party, which, by the way, is an awesome name, where they start chanting, Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. All right, Rocky Anderson, by all means, best of luck to you in your presidential bid.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Chrissy Hussopple, it's a fascinating name, sent this out on Twitter. Who would you like to see as president in 2012? Look, you know, this is an easy one because you saw it from earlier in the show. I mean, if I had it totally my way and I could press a button, Rocky Anderson's great. You know who else is great? Bernie Sanders, but he's not going to run, right? I assume from the people that are running, I'd easily pick Rocky Anderson, a real progressive and wants to challenge and change the system, which is exactly what we want to do. I'm not sure we live in that ideal